What if I told you that the most highly engineered, multi-layered botanical drug in your house isn't actually sitting in your medicine cabinet?
Right, it's probably just sitting in a bowl on your kitchen counter.
Exactly. Like we do this all the time, right? You walk through the produce aisle, you toss a bag of fruit into your cart, and you basically never give it a second thought.
You just wash them and snack on them.
Yeah. But today, we're looking at the humble red grape. And when you actually zoom in on what this fruit is doing at a microscopic level, you realize you're not just looking at a snack.
No, not at all. You are looking at a complex delivery system packed with compounds that interact with our biology in ways we are, honestly, only just beginning to map out.
Which is wild. So, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to cut through all that wellness noise, bypass the hype, and uncover the true health impact of red grapes.
And to do that properly, we really need to set some strict ground rules for the data we look at. Because, it is incredibly easy to find studies where scientists just drop massive, unnatural doses of plant chemicals onto cells in a petri dish.
Oh, or they feed them to mice and then make these wild, sweeping claims about human health.
Exactly. We are bypassing all of that today.
Yeah.
Our focus is exclusively on high-quality human data.
The gold standard.
Right. Randomized controlled trials and major meta-analyses. We're looking at how the unique matrix of polyphenols in red grapes, things like resveratrol, anthocyanins, and flavonols, how they physically change our cardiovascular system.
And how they quell systemic inflammation.
Yes, and even how they reshape our cognitive function.
So whether you're trying to optimize your heart health or maybe looking for a mental edge at work, or you just want to know if your daily glass of grape juice is actually doing anything, we're going to give you the definitive science-backed answers.
I think to really understand how grapes affect the body, we have to start with the body's primary delivery system, right? The cardiovascular plumbing.
Yeah, let's start there because blood flow is everything.
It really is. And we have a major 2020 meta-analysis from the Journal of Clinical Medicine that aggregated all these rigorous randomized controlled trials.
Okay, so what did they actually find? Because I feel like every time we talk about heart health, it's always just about lowering cholesterol.
Well, they did look at that, and the numbers are quite impressive. Grape products reduced total cholesterol by 7.6 milligrams per deciliter.
Wow, okay.
Triglycerides dropped by 14.5, and LDL, the bad cholesterol, went down by 6.3, all while HDL, the good cholesterol, actually went up by 1.4.
Huh. That's actually pretty comprehensive.
It is. And on top of the lipid makeover, systematic reviews show an overall systolic blood pressure reduction of about 1.5 to 3.17 millimeters of mercury.
Especially from grapeseed extracts.
Right. In whole grape products.
Okay, I have to push back a little bit here, though.
Go ahead.
I mean, dropping LDL by 6 points or blood pressure by 3 points, that sounds good on paper, but is it really a game changer for your health?
That's a fair question.
Because if I'm looking at my lab results, it doesn't sound like a massive overnight shift. Like it's not a prescription statin.
No, it's not a statin. But this is where we have to look past just the gross numbers and understand why it matters at a cellular level. It's really about the nitric oxide pathway and endothelial function.
Okay, endothelial function. Break that down for me.
So the polyphenols enhance something called the nucleophilic tone of your cells.
That's nucleophilic tone. Sounds very sci-fi.
It basically means how well your cells can protect themselves against oxidative stress. They protect against oxidized LDL specifically, which the data shows drops by 4.5 units per liter.
Wait, oxidized LDL, so not just the regular LDL floating around.
Exactly. Regular LDL isn't inherently evil. It becomes a problem when it oxidizes, essentially when it rusts.
So it's the rusted cars causing the pileup.
Precisely. That rusted LDL is what sticks to your artery walls and causes plaques. By enhancing that nucleophilic tone, the grapes are basically preventing the LDL from rusting in the first place. Oh, wow. So it's not just lowering the amount of cholesterol, it's actually changing the quality of the vascular environment.
Right. It's structural protection.
That makes so much more sense. But that brings up a bigger question. Why is the LDL rusting in the first place?
Inflammation.
Right, systemic inflammation. Poor cardiovascular health is almost always driven by this underlying fire.
And since we just established how grapes protect the arteries, The logical next step is exploring how they actually put out those inflammatory fires.
Because those fires are what damage the arteries to begin with.
Exactly. So let's look at another 2020 meta-analysis, this one published in the British Journal of Nutrition. They looked at 17 randomized controlled trials.
That's a lot of data. How many participants was that?
Covering 668 participants in total.
Okay, so a really solid sample size. And what did they measure?
They focused heavily on C-reactive protein, or CRP, which is a major biomarker for inflammation produced in the liver.
Right, for anyone listening, CRP is basically like the flashing red check engine light on your body's dashboard. That's a great way to describe it. And they found that grape polyphenols significantly decrease CRP levels.
But there's a catch with the dosing, isn't there?
Yes, there is. The most significant effects don't just happen from eating a few grapes once a month. You need higher doses, more than 500 milligrams per day of grape polyphenols.
500 milligrams. Yeah.
And you need time. The best results were seen over longer periods, like 12 weeks or more.
So it's a cumulative effect.
Very much so. And interestingly, these anti-inflammatory effects were especially pronounced in people who already had existing clinical conditions.
Like metabolic syndrome or obesity?
Exactly. People whose bodies were already dealing with high levels of baseline inflammation.
That makes sense. It's like if your house is already on fire, you're going to notice the effect of the fire hose a lot more than if your house is fine.
Right.
Which brings up the mechanism. I like to think of these polyphenols as sort of biological fire blanket.
A fire blanket, how so?
Well, they smother the pro-inflammatory cytokines, things like TNF-alpha and IL-6, before those cytokines can even trigger the liver to pump out the CRP.
That is a highly accurate analogy, and we can take it a step further into the cellular picture.
Oh, let's hear it.
Grapes achieve this by inhibiting endotoxin-mediated kinases.
Okay, kin kinases.
Kinases, they're basically signaling enzymes. So by inhibiting them, grapes aren't just masking the inflammation, they are actively interrupting the inflammatory signaling process at a cellular level.
Wait, so they're cutting the alarm wire before the alarm can even sound?
Exactly. They stop the communication that tells the body to stay inflamed.
That is so cool. Okay, so if grapes improve blood flow and they reduce the systemic inflammation, it stands to reason that the most vascular, energy-hungry organ in the body would benefit immensely.
You're talking about the brain.
I am talking about the brain. Let's get into mind grapes.
Mind grapes, I love that. And you're completely right. If you fix the plumbing and put out the fire, the brain is going to thrive.
So let's talk about the 2017 Cognigrate clinical trial from Frontiers in Pharmacology.
This is a fantastic study. They took 111 healthy older adults and had them take 250 milligrams of Vitis vinifera extract daily.
Vitis vinifera, this is a scientific name for the common grape, right?
Right. And they did this for 12 weeks. The results were striking. Their mini mental state examination scores, or MMSE, significantly improved.
Which is a huge deal for cognitive preservation in older adults.
Huge. But furthermore, their neuropsychological status improved across the board.
The mood numbers were what really got me. Like, depression scores dropped by 15.8%.
And their anxiety scores plummeted by 24.9%.
Almost 25% reduction in anxiety, just from a grape extract.
Yes. It just highlights how deeply tied our mental health is to neuroinflammation and vascular health.
But wait, I need to ask for some clarification
Let's
here.
let's up.
Because there's this older study, the 2013 Haskell study, that looked at 20 healthy young adults.
Ah, yes. The Concord grape juice study.
Right. And in that one, they gave them a single 200 milliliter dose of Concord purple grape juice. And they saw an immediate increase in feelings of calm and improved speed of attention.
Within just 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Is this a long-term structural brain protector that takes 12 whiffs? Or is it like an acute smart drug that gives you an immediate mental boost?
It's actually both.
Both. How can it be both?
It comes down to two different mechanisms. Long-term, polyphenols like resveratrol slowly activate the SIRT1 pathways in the brain.
Okay, but C1.
Right, which are strongly associated with neuroprotection and cell survival over time. That's the 12-week older adult study.
So that's the slow remodeling of the house.
Exactly. But short-term, remember the nitric oxide pathway we talked about earlier?
Well, the vasodilation, expanding the blood vessels.
Yes. The acute dilation of blood vessels, thanks to nitric oxide, delivers an immediate flush of oxygen and glucose straight to the brain.
Wow, okay.
So that's what those young adults were feeling in 20 minutes. A literal rush of fuel that boosted their sustained attention.
That is fascinating. Okay, so now that we, the listener, understand the physical and mental benefits, the crucial final step is practical application.
The practical magic. How do we actually get this into our bodies?
Right. And we need to be clear up front, drinking gallons of red wine every night is not the answer.
Definitely not. The alcohol negates the benefits. We need to look at the whole fruit matrix.
So let's break down where these compounds actually live in the grape.
Well, resveratrol, which we just talked about for the ART1 pathways, is mostly found in the skin.
Okay, so skin equals resveratrol.
Proanthocyanidins, which are fantastic for the cardiovascular system, are packed tightly in the seeds.
Wait, the seeds. But everyone buys seedless grapes.
I know, which is a shame because you're missing out on a massive amount of polyphenols. And finally, the anthocyanins, those are what give the grape its dark red or purple color.
So the darker the grape, the better. Green grapes aren't really pulling their weight here.
Correct. You want the dark purple or red.
Okay, so what is the actionable dosing based on all these trials? If I want to hit that 500 milligram threshold, what do I eat?
You're looking at about 1 to 2 cups of fresh red or purple grapes daily.
That's pretty doable. What is that in grams?
Roughly 150 to 300 grams. Or, if you prefer juice, 150 to 300 milliliters of dark grape juice.
Make sure it's 100% juice, obviously, not the sugar-added stuff.
Definitely. And if you want a powder, about 60 grams of freeze-dried powder will do the trick.
Wait, why freeze-dried specifically?
Because heat destroys anthocyanins.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can lose up to 50% of the active compounds when the product is cooked or boiled. So freeze-drying or fresh consumption is really optimal.
Good to know. And I saw something about co-ingesting it with fat.
Yes, co-ingesting with a fat source like olive oil or a handful of nuts is highly recommended.
Because resveratrol is fat-soluble, right?
Exactly. The fat helps your body absorb it much more efficiently.
But we should probably mention safety, too.
We should. While it's generally very safe, the polyphenols do have mild antiplatelet effects.
Meaning they naturally thin the blood a little bit.
Right, so if you are on blood thinners, like warfarin, you definitely need to consult a doctor before dramatically upping your grape intake.
Absolutely. You know, looking at all this, it really hits home that extracting just one chemical, like buying a pure resveratrol pill, completely misses the point.
It really does. Modern science loves a magic bullet, but it rarely works that way.
It's not a solo act. It's a botanical symphony. Like,
Right.
You need the fiber, the water, and the whole matrix playing together.
I completely agree. The highest quality RCT data strongly supports the efficacy of the whole grape product or broad-spectrum extracts. You can't just isolate one piece and expect the full benefit.
So just to recap this whole journey, we've seen how the complex matrix of red grapes acts as a vasodilator to lower blood pressure and improve our lipids.
Right.
And it serves as a literal fire blanket against systemic inflammation by lowering CRP.
And let's not forget the dual-action brain booster, acute attention, and long-term cognitive preservation.
All from a grape. It's wild.
It is. But, there's one final, somewhat provocative thought I'd like to leave you with today.
Ooh. Okay. Lay it on me.
We know that the oral bioavailability of many of these polyphenols is actually quite low.
Meaning they don't easily enter the bloodstream directly when we eat them.
Exactly. Most of them pass right through the stomach. So what if the secret to the grape isn't what it does to our human cells?
Wait, what do you mean?
What if these dark red pigments are actually just high-quality food for our gut microbiome?
Oh, wow.
Think about it. What if we are just feeding our gut bacteria, and those bacteria are the ones producing the secondary metabolites and sending the signals that actually heal our hearts and calm our minds?
That completely flips the perspective. We're not even feeding ourselves, we're feeding the bacteria, and they're doing the heavy lifting.
It's very possible. The microbiome is the great mediator of all these plant compounds.
That is something to definitely mull over. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you're tossing some red grapes into your salad with olive oil or pouring a glass of dark grape juice with breakfast, we hope you can apply this knowledge to your own daily routine.
And remember to keep the seeds in.
Yes, eat the seeds. Catch you all on the next deep dive.